My name is Walter Clemens. I am 88 years old, and I've been sitting in this chair for about 20 minutes now, trying to figure out where to begin. I don't know that there is a right place. People assume that when you get to my age, you spend a lot of time thinking about what you didn't do, the paths you didn't walk down, the choices you left on the table. I've had a few people ask me over the years. My granddaughter asked me just last spring, actually. She said, "Grandpa, do you ever think about what your life would have looked like if you'd made different choices?" She's 23. She asked it the way you ask something when you're 23, with this quiet hope that the answer is going to mean something to her own life. I told her the truth. I said, "Not as much as you'd think, sweetheart." She looked at me like I'd said something sad. I'm not sure she was wrong. I grew up in a small town in central Pennsylvania, Millheim. If you've never heard of it, that's about right. It was the kind of place where everyone knew which families had money and which ones were only pretending to, and everyone pretended not to notice either way. My father worked at a feed supply store for 31 years. Same store, same counter, same smell of grain dust and motor oil every time I walked in after school. I used to think that was a small life. I spent a long time thinking that. I left when I was 19. Didn't go far, ended up in Pittsburgh, studied accounting because someone told me it was stable. I don't even remember who said it, some adult whose name I've long forgotten, and I built 40 years of my working life around advice I can't even attribute to a face. I met my wife, Dorothea, in 1961. She was working the front desk of a dental office on Forbes Avenue. I came in for a cleaning I'd been putting off for 2 years, and she looked up at me over her glasses and said, "You're late." I thought she meant I was late for my appointment. She meant it as something else entirely. She told me that years later. She said she meant I was late, like she'd been waiting. I don't know if that's true or if she just liked the story of it. Either way, I've kept it. We married in 1963, had 2 children, a boy, then a girl, Raymond and Susan. Raymond is 62 now. Lives in Ohio. We talk on the phone about every 2 weeks. It's a good phone call. It's always a good phone call. But I'll tell you something about good phone calls. Sometimes they're good because you've both agreed, without ever saying so, to keep certain things off the table. I don't think I was a bad father. I've thought about this more than I've thought about any road I didn't take, and I don't think I was a bad father. But I think I was a father the way a lot of men of my generation were fathers, present in the room, absent in ways that didn't have a name yet. Raymond played baseball all through high school. Good pitcher, not great, but good enough that people noticed. There was a game his junior year. I'm going to say it was April. It was cold the way April in Pennsylvania is cold, and I wasn't there. I was at a conference in Cleveland. I've never asked him if he remembers that I wasn't there. I think I haven't asked because I already know the answer. That's the thing I've come to understand, sitting in this chair at 88. It's not the roads I didn't take that stay with me. It's the moments I was present for in body, but had somehow already left. Dorothea died in 2019, February. It was a Tuesday. I know it was a Tuesday because Raymond drove up from Ohio that day, and he had to leave by Thursday to get back for a work obligation. And I remember this thought very clearly. I remember thinking, how strange that the world just keeps making its demands. We had 56 years together. I used to think that was a long time. Now I understand it's just what you get, and then it's over, and the number doesn't really soften anything. There's a period after you lose someone you've spent most of your life with, where you become something of an archaeologist. You go through drawers, closets, the top shelf of the bedroom closet where things accumulate that neither of you quite knew what to do with. I found things I expected to find. Her reading glasses, 3 of them. She could never find them and kept buying new ones. A recipe she'd clipped from a magazine, probably in the 1980s, for a lemon cake she never made. Birthday cards from the children. Letters from her sister in Maryland that passed before she did. And then I found something I wasn't expecting. A journal. A small one, green cover, the kind you'd buy at a drugstore. I want to be careful about how I say this. I read it. I don't know that I should have. I've gone back and forth on that. But I read it. There was nothing in it that was devastating in the way you might imagine. No secrets that changed the shape of things. It was mostly ordinary. Observations, small frustrations, gratitude written quietly, the way she did everything. But there was one entry. I don't remember exactly when it was written. Sometime in the late 90s, I think, based on something she mentioned about Raymond's children. She wrote, and I'm going to try to remember this as closely as I can. She wrote something like, "Walter is a good man. I know he is. But sometimes I think he's living just slightly to the left of his own life, and I don't know how to tell him that without it sounding like a wound." I sat with that for a long time. I'm still sitting with it, if I'm honest. Not because it hurt me, or not only because it hurt me, but because she saw something in me that I had never found the words for myself, and she protected me from it for 50 years, and I never knew. She carried that observation, and she loved me anyway, and she never made me feel it, not once, and I don't know if I would have been capable of the same thing. Living just slightly to the left of your own life. I've turned that over in my mind more times than I can count, and I think what she meant, what I've come to believe she meant, wasn't that I made the wrong choices. It wasn't about the roads I didn't take. It was something quieter than that, something that doesn't have a clean name. It was that I was always somewhere else in my attention, even when I was there. At dinner, on vacation, at Raymond's baseball games when I did manage to show up, in bed even, my body in the room, but some part of me running calculations about work, about money, about something that needed doing, something I hadn't resolved yet. I was always just finishing the last thing in my head before I arrived, and by the time I arrived, the moment had already started without me. I retired in 1998. I remember this very clearly. I thought, now is when real life begins. Now that the obligation is finished, now I'll be present the way I always meant to be. Dorothea and I took a trip to Portugal that year. It was beautiful, genuinely beautiful. I remember the light there. It was different from any light I'd seen. Something about the way it came off the water. But I also remember sitting at a cafe in Lisbon with wine and fresh bread, and Dorothea across from me in the afternoon light, and I remember thinking about whether I responded to a letter from my accountant before we left. That was 1998. Dorothea has been gone since 2019, and what I remember about Portugal is the light on the water and whether I responded to a letter. I don't tell you this to make you feel sorry for me. I'm not sure it even makes me feel sorry for myself now anymore. It just makes me feel like I finally understand what she was writing about in that journal, what she was too kind to say out loud. There's a smaller thing I think about too. There was a man I worked with for about 12 years, Gus Ferreira. He was Portuguese, actually. Funny, given what I just told you. We sat in adjacent offices for over a decade, and we'd have lunch together maybe once a week at a sandwich place around the corner from our building that probably was gone for 30 years. Gus was funny,
genuinely funny, in a dry way that crept up on you. And he was honest in the way that some people are honest, where it doesn't feel like an attack, it just feels like clarity. When I moved to a different firm in 1987, we shook hands, and he said he'd look me up, and I said the same, and neither of us did. I've thought about Gus over the years. I looked him up once, maybe 15 years ago, online. I couldn't find him. I didn't try very hard. He's probably gone now. That's the thing about being 88. Most people you think about are probably gone now. I'm not sure what the point of Gus is exactly. He wasn't a great love or a defining friendship. He was just a good person who was in my life for a while and then wasn't, and I let him go without much thought, and now I think about him sometimes.